I call the North Korean prison system a torture machine. There was this one way for North Korean government to torture its people by dunking someone in a water tank and just having enough water, if they're on their tiptoes, to breathe out of the water, and having like a brick or something on the feet. Our children and our grandchildren will look back and wonder why this generation didn't do anything. North Korea and China are afraid of your stories. That's how powerful they are. This woman I interviewed was in North Korea. She went to China because she couldn't find any opportunities. She was sold to a Chinese man and she had a baby. A month after she had her child, she was taken away and sent back. In North Korea, you are in forced labor, starved, and there are many, many horrible things about that prison camp. And she said the thing that stuck out the most was, and I'm sorry I'm gonna get so graphic, but
So I have Mr. Dan Chong. He is a North Korean human rights activist and a CEO and an author. He recently wrote a book called A Hard Freedom. I highly recommend you guys checking it out. It's on Amazon. We'll drop the link in the description so you guys can actually check it out. So Dan, please. So my original question was, what first made you care about North Korea?
Yeah, I'll just start from the beginning. My best friend from college, Mike Kim, took a short trip to China. He was following a pastor out in Northeast China. He didn't know what to expect. He just wanted to tag along with this pastor. And so he met a North Korean girl. She looked like she was, he met many North Korean girls, people, and she looked like she was 7 years old, but because of the effects of starvation, she was 14 actually. And as you know, starvation causes stunting, which is, people are usually shorter. Puberty is delayed. And so she told him her story, and he told me her story. Mike told me her story. And I don't know why. I just couldn't sleep after that for a long time. And eventually we heard so many stories of suffering from North Korea during the famine and the tragedy that was happening when people get to China, especially women. And so he quit his job in January 1st, 2003. He moved out to China and to see what he could do. And I wanted to help my friend. So I said, I'll help you do whatever it takes, for you to be able to stay safe and be sustainable out there. And crossing borders was sort of born out of that. It was me and a group of friends helping Mike, who founded the organization.
Gotcha. Yeah. So basically, that one story of that little girl who was 14-year-old that looked like 7 because of the stunting. When I was in North Korea, I was slightly above, like in terms of like the height. I was a little bit above average, even though I went to the North Korean defectors detention center where I was forced to work up to 12 hours because, escaping North Korea. And yeah, it's like the growth is really affected by, like, from young age, like there is a time when you need to eat and sleep well. Did you ever imagine this would become your life's work, actually, when you're actually getting into it?
No, not at all. I was sort of following my heart, and I became full-time staff much later in 2012. And before that, I wanted to do this work in a more meaningful and strategic way, but I had to
Mm,
work myself. And
mm-hmm,
so I I always felt bad. I felt like I
mm,
was like taking money away from the people who needed it in China
mm,
by
mm,
coming on staff. So I always said no way, there's no way I can do this, but um you know, we were 24 to 26 when we started the organization, and people got married and had kids, and people started, getting progressing in their careers. And so there was very little time for any of us to really put good effort into it. And so I was
mm,
asked to
mm,
lead the organization in
mm-hmm.
2012.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. And that kind of leads me to ask you this. So why North Korea instead of another humanitarian cause?
Yeah, I was born in Korea, South Korea, and I moved to America when I was a baby. Um, and I grew up in America in the 80s and 90s when it wasn't cool to be Korean.
Mm,
It's cool right now.
mm,
My kids are very lucky. I always tell them that. Um, and so I really had a sense of my Koreanness growing up, because
mm,
I was always made fun of. Part of my childhood, I lived in Indiana, where I was just Koreans were just a tiny percentage of my
mm,
school. I got picked on a lot, and that made me really identify more as Korean.
mm, mm,
And so I was always aware of my identity as a Korean American, and um, to see another Korean person
mm,
suffering
mm,
that much, I think
mhm,
that
mhm,
really struck a chord in me. And
mm,
I also think that the suffering that is happening in North Korea today, it's a generational type of uh, trauma that we're witnessing.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
Many people look back at the Holocaust and
Right.
wonder why didn't people do anything? Why were Americans so slow to act? And I think we are looking at another one of those situations where the level of suffering is comparable to Nazi Germany, by not by me, but by human rights experts.
Mhm,
And I think our children and our grandchildren will look back and wonder why this generation didn't do anything. And I just didn't want that to happen, at least for me.
mhm,
So,
mhm.
yeah, I really do think that this is a generational issue.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it is a generational issue, and some people don't believe that it is happening in North Korea, and there are just countless North Korean defectors have testified
Yeah,
against North Korea and have written many books about North Korean human rights
yes.
issues, but there are people who don't believe that that is actually going on in North Korea. Even worse, some people really believe that North Korea is some sort of like this socialist, like a socialist paradise. It's like
Yeah,
where they give
I've seen that.
everything, free housing, free medical, free food. You just need to work. That's it. Every time I hear those, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, like, you are free to think, whatever you want to think, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a free country. But I mean, to say that to a lot of North Korean defectors who have, risked their lives coming to either America and South Korea, yeah, it's a little bit crossing the line in a
I
way.
Yeah, I can't imagine how you feel. I've been on Reddit, so I've seen the crazy the comments about the realities of it. How does that make you feel?
I mean, no, I mean, that kind of like reassures the freedoms that we have, right?
Mm,
Like
that's
freedom
good.
of speech, freedom of information, and freedom
Yes.
of religion. And if it was in North Korea, none of that would have been possible. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't need to do anything. I don't need to feel anything because, well, I'm
Mm.
here and I'm hearing your opinion about it. If it was in North Korea, it's not possible at all.
Mm.
So
That's
I'm
good.
glad. I'm in a way that I'm in a place where my opinion and other people's opinion are respected, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that creates a room for debate, right? It's like
Mm.
debating isn't much more of like, oh, I want to win. I want to win in this conversation, but
Mm.
debate is much more of like, I want to create clarity for people that are watching, right? People that are
Yeah.
reading this, people that are feeling like however they want to feel.
That's good.
So I've seen a lot of like misconceptions like that,
Yeah.
about North
Me
Korea,
too.
and yeah, exactly. So I wanted to ask, like, what are some misconceptions that do Americans have about North
Mm.
Korean refugees, and also South Korean people have about North Korea?
Yeah. Well, there's what we talked about. There are, I think it's a small minority of people who are very vocal online who believe that North Korea is a socialist paradise.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that there's that misconception. And then I think more broadly speaking, because of the stories that you hear are so dark and dire, and you do a great job at shedding a different light on North Korean people. But, you know, the North Korean people that I meet usually are hilarious. They're so funny.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think, it's very similar to like why people say Jewish people are funny, right? There's this long history of suffering. And because of that, it gives you a different sort of take on the world. And
Mm-hmm.
so the and also the North Korean, mostly women that we help in at crossing borders, it's they get to freedom in South Korea or even in China, and where they're not free,
Mm-hmm.
and they feel like when they're, especially when they're together with one another, like this is my chance to have fun, like, and I'm going to really have fun. Um, I'm not going to go halfway. And so when they're together, they have a blast with one another. I've never heard such joyful laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah. Also in South Korea, um, there are many misconceptions about North Korea and North Koreans. I think the biggest thing that makes it culturally difficult here in South Korea, where I'm at right now, um, is that people feel bad for North Koreans. They pity them. And
Mm-hmm.
when you pity someone, and, I could pity someone, but if I have like a rounded perspective of you as a total person and not just someone to be pitied, that's fine. But when your primary emotion or perception of someone is pity, then it brings a different dynamic to the relationship where you can't really be friends with someone
Mm-hmm.
who just pities you primarily. So I think
Mm-hmm.
there's that. I think also in South Korea, uh, people don't really know this, but I have family here in South Korea around my age who grew up in the 80s and 90s here. And there was some indoctrination in South Korea as well through the school system,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like how bad North Korea is, and how there are enemies, and how we're the best. We're so much better than North Korea. And there was
Mm-hmm.
also uh, a concerted effort by the South Korean government to train children to identify spies,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in school,
Yeah.
they're taught like, okay, look out for people. They if they're wearing a wig and they talk a certain way, and they they act a certain way, then call. There's a hotline. There was a hotline 113 in South Korea where
In
you would,
oh
yeah,
wow, I
where
did
you
not
would
know that.
call. It's like 119 is the emergency number, and
Hmm.
113 was the North Korean spy number. And every kid
Wow.
knew that. And
Hmm.
so if you have that just in the background,
Mindset. Right.
yeah,
Right.
and you might not think that now, but that's just kind of like part of your operating system, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's in the background. And I think that that does matter. I think that those very subtle things make North Koreans feel a certain way, like they could never belong. And um, they feel definitely like outsiders.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've witnessed, not just like the emotional traumas of overcoming, right, the North Korean trauma, but also at the same time, like the cultural barriers that North Korean defectors have to overcome.
Yes.
Um, like when I came to America, it was, for me, like everything was completely new. The
Mm.
language, the food, the culture, and just the way of living, right? Coming into the room wearing shoes in the house, right? Like that was like completely out of my, it's like DNA. So I basically like put up part of my DNA and just like stick American DNA in there.
Yeah,
Um,
interesting.
and, uh, and, and, and for me, it was a little bit tough,
Mm-hmm.
readjusting to this country. But I often think that if I went to South Korea, I feel like
Mm.
my struggle would have been just a little bit more easier, just because we speak the same language and
Yeah.
the culture is somewhat similar. The education system might have been a lot easier because I didn't have to learn from the beginning. But I later realized that that was not the case for
Mm.
again, like a lot of North Korean defectors who resettled in South Korea, they succeed. There are a lot of CEOs, lawyers,
Yes.
doctors, right,
Yes.
and people who are really really well adjusted. But that's not always the case. For example, I have friends who unfortunately took their own life because the
Mm.
adjusting was just so tough. And there are a lot of people who can't still adjust. Like they've been in South Korea for a number of years,
Yes.
but still struggles with their mental health. So I, as a person who have been working in the field for a long time, I just wanted to ask, like, is there any struggles that nobody talks about, like the North
Yeah.
Korean refugees that go through, and like what emotional scars like last the longest, in your opinion?
Yeah. It's a great question. Yeah. I mean, I think in general, North Koreans and just Koreans in general don't really talk about mental health. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in South Korea and in North Korea,
Mm-hmm.
it is seen as a weakness. And I'm sure you could testify to this. In
Oh
North
yes.
Korea, if you are seen to be mentally ill, you'll be sent away to a certain hospital. Your
Mm-hmm.
songbun, your social status will be hurt by that, and your families as well. So uh, it's when someone, and America was like this for a really long time too, but when someone says that I have mental health issues, in Korea, it means something completely different. It means that you're crazy, right? And you need to be
Yeah.
institutionalized.
Yeah.
And so people don't really talk about it here in South Korea. North Korean refugees don't talk about it here in South Korea because of all of that baggage. They don't, there is not an understanding that there is this other layer of mental health. Sure, there is schizophrenia and extreme psychological episodes, but there
Mm-hmm.
is another layer that affects you tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, in North Korea, uh, as you know, and they have experienced the prison camp system, I think that first and foremost is the most horrible part of North Korean life.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you have had the misfortune of going through it, and this woman that I interviewed for my book, she was in South Korea when I interviewed her, so she had made it to safety, but she was in North Korea. She went to China because she didn't find any opportunities for herself in the country. She couldn't find any opportunities, and she was sold to a Chinese man, and she had a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And about a month after she had her child, she was taken away and sent back to North Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, um, she said, in North Korea, you are in forced labor, you are starved, and there are many, many horrible things about that prison camp.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she said that the thing that stuck out the most was, I guess, the North Korean government in the prison camps checks your body for money, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That you smuggled in.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm sorry I'm going to get so graphic here, especially in a live chat, but there was this guard at the prison camp who wanted to check this woman every day, even though
Mm-hmm.
he knew that she didn't have money,
Mm-hmm.
and she was still bleeding from after her giving birth.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, out of all that was very shocking to me on a human level. Like, I can't believe that happened to her, but I also can't believe, compared to all the other torture that you
Mm-hmm.
experience that is so well documented now, the horrible ways that you are worked, that you are starved, that was what stuck out to this woman. It was the dehumanization
Mm-hmm.
uh, of her. And I hear this many, many times, but from North Koreans, that I was treated like less than an animal.
Mm-hmm.
They always say that in my interviews with them, and I think it's the dehumanization that really sticks with you. It's
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
it's the offense
Yeah.
of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, actually, that's a really good point. And, I want to add to that, like, if you're lucky, right? If you get caught, and if you're lucky, then you will be sent to, labor camps like the 노동단련대, that's what it's called,
Hmm.
or even 교화소, right, which is the
Yeah.
4 years. If you're proven of trying to defect to South Korea, then that's
Yeah.
basically and if you're lucky, you'll go to the 4 years prison camp, and you will be released after you serve your time. And of course, if you survive.
Yeah.
But if you are proven guilty of trying to defect to South Korea, then you'll be sent to political prison camp where you will never
Hmm.
get out, right? And the interrogation process is extremely gruesome and very dehumanizing,
Yes.
right? So some people still, because there are people like I've escaped North Korea twice, and there are many
Hmm.
people who come to South Korea. They've escaped multiple times.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, I think that kind of aspect stick with the people the like, longest time is like, am I worth it? Like, am I worthy
Mm.
of being loved, and am I worthy of being taken care of? Right,
Yes.
when you come to this land and people want to provide you with things, but I've noticed that a lot of people actually just trying to get away from, like, for example, like the help, right? Like the church communities, for
Mm.
example.
Yeah.
Like a lot of great church communities where they want to support North Korean
Yes.
refugees that are, in terms of the financials and also studies and, have like small groups. But I've noticed over the times, North Korean defectors, especially, they want to be like isolated and also just
Mm-hmm.
want to be in North Korean communities alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what, and I think that comes from that stems from the
Mm.
trauma that, from North Korea, the way that the guards treated us, and yeah. So a little bit
Mm.
about, let's dive a little bit about into the life in China, because I do
Yeah.
remember you talking about you operating in China too, right?
Yes.
And let's just talk about as much as you can share. It's like, if it's unsafe, I don't want to talk about it, because there are some people still, I assume, in
Yes.
China, right? So I mean, I've talked about this on my channel like over and over again for the past 2 years, but what
Mm.
actually happens when someone gets caught, right, in China, right?
But
So if you,
by the authorities or
by the authorities, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, they are immediately.
When people think about North Korea, they usually think of nuclear warheads, authoritarianism, and a heartless dictator. I'm making content because I want everybody to think of North Korean people. They are ordinary people who don't know how much better life could be. If you want to help me be a voice for voiceless North Koreans, I would love for you to support me on Patreon, where you can get early access to full-length videos, all sorts of fun pictures, outtakes, and other exclusive videos. Thank you, and I hope to see you there.
Yeah, they are immediately sent to back to North Korea, and they are
Hmm.
immediately sent to a prison camp.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
where you'll
there
be,
might be
mhm,
some delay in getting sent back based on the political relationship of North Korea or COVID.
mhm.
Um, some people were detained for years during COVID and then sent back. So yeah, you will be sent back immediately to North Korea, and um, there that is the fear that is hanging over every North Korean who is illegally in China, that you will be
Hmm.
sent back. Because not only, you know, you won't be just sent back and given a ticket or something, right? Or punished, even within a normal jail as we know it in the United States. But
Hmm.
I call the North Korean prison system a torture machine, right?
Yeah.
Because it is finely tuned to bring as much mental and physical anguish as possible. And unlike Nazi Germany, where their concentration camps lasted for 5 years, 7 years, the North Korean regime has perfected this process over decades and decades now. And so that's why I call it a torture machine. And so
Mm.
every North Korean in China has that looming over their head every
Hmm.
day that they wake up. And you spoke about people feeling isolated in South Korea and wanting only to spend time with North Koreans. Maybe that starts in China as well, because
Mm.
everyone in China, if they don't like you, they could send you back to North Korea. And the woman that I just told you a story about, it was she she was in China for a year, and people in her neighborhood during that time, she didn't know any Mandarin, but people in the neighborhood would talk to her in Mandarin every day,
Hmm.
and she
Hmm.
just thought, "Oh, I these are nice people in my neighborhood saying hi." She would just nod her head and go about her business. But after a year, she realized, no, they're mocking me.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so she talked back to the wrong guy,
Mm.
and he said, "Okay, I'm calling the authorities on you." And that was it for her, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think that is part of the trauma of spending time in China is just the fear that you might have, and that causes isolation and further depression. I interviewed another woman who said that she was made to work every day on her family's farm in China. And even though she didn't feel well, even though, they wanted a return on their investment. And so they would physically hold her hand and drag her to the field every day, no rest days. And she said that even when I went to the bathroom, someone waited outside. Someone from the family waited outside for me to be done, took her by the hand, and made her work every day. Even when she was menstruating and she had terrible pains from that, it didn't matter. They made her work every day. Again, it's very dehumanizing. And if she doesn't do that, then they'll just call the police and it's over for her, right? So she has to do it. That is always, that is always looming over people's heads. Yeah.
Yeah. You see, like, that's a great point because when I first escaped North Korea, life was great, right? I'm coming to China and I'm just so happy.
Interesting.
The reason is because I've never thought that I escaped North Korea. I've always thought that, I am here, I belong here, I'm living with my dad. So, my life is great. This is going to be my life forever. So I lived, like there's no tomorrow, enjoying life, going out outside, and going to arcade, especially like 15-year-old, right? And seeing the street lights, and arcade room and PC cafes and all the food that you can eat, as well as like South Korean drama, watching them over and over again. And that was like time, like 2008. That's when there's a South Korean TV program called 1박 2일. So I think it's like a 1 day, like a 1 night 2 day, kind of like a really popular TV program. And I'm watching those. I'm like, wow, it's like completely different. Those people are living completely different life than I did.
Yeah.
I do, right? But unfortunately, so my dad had a girlfriend who escaped North Korea, and she was living with us at the time, and she brought 3 daughters from North Korea as well.
Wow.
So about, including her, a total of 6 of us were living in the house.
Yeah.
So 5 of us were North Korean defectors and my dad.
Wow.
And that mom actually worked for the past 5 years, every single day at this, like a neighborhood restaurant, like a Chinese woman-owned restaurant, like a family restaurant.
Yes.
Every day, 5 a.m., she would go down and watch. She made sundae. So I'm not sure what sundae is in English.
Korean
it's like a sausage.
blood sausage. Yeah.
Yeah, Korean blood sausage. And it's really popular in China as well because it's like a 조선족, right? So they're descendant of Korean people. So she would do that for the past 5 years, every single day without skipping a day. And she was extremely underpaid. So she eventually said, I had enough. I want a raise. For the past 5 years, I've never taken a day off. I've been working here faithfully. Give me a raise. And she said no, right? The owner said no, because there is no way that you can say, oh, then I'm going to quit. Because if you quit, I'm going to report you to the authorities and have you get captured and sent back to North Korea. My dad's girlfriend, she's like, I'm done. So she left that restaurant, and that's what eventually led us to our first capture.
Wow.
And being sent back to
all
North
5
Korea.
of you.
One of them is actually married to a Chinese man, so she was safe. So all 4 of us were captured and sent back to North Korea. And I can say that thankfully all 4 of us eventually escaped North Korea again, and they are resettled in South Korea now. So,
Wonderful.
sometimes I, talk to them and kind of reminisce about those old times. But
But the woman, your father's girlfriend, I'm sure in many ways she would say that she's lucky because she wasn't
mhm,
sold, right?
yeah, yeah,
Even though she was being abused as a laborer, and
hmm
she had all the fear of repatriation over
hmm
her head. Even that situation, they would consider. I wouldn't consider it, but she would probably consider that really, really lucky.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I mean, there are a lot of women who are like straight cross the borders. Like I've met,
yeah.
a few of North Korean defectors who straight up cross the border and then being betrayed by their brokers and being
Oh, yeah.
sold into marriage or even, traffickings.
Yes.
And again, it's not everyone is in that category, right? Some of
Yeah.
the people that I've met, they found really good husbands in
Mm-hmm.
China,
Sure.
and they're living a happy life, right?
Yes.
Even now. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard somewhere along the lines or somewhere on the internet, I've read that there are about 200,000 North Korean refugees that are currently hiding in China. Is that ballpark? Is that true? Is that false?
We don't know what's true. We could only guess, right? I think,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think that was a figure printed by Radio Free Asia
Mm-hmm.
about a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, fact checkers of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but, there are numbers as low as 5,000, which I don't believe. There, so there's really no way to count them, right? Because the Chinese government, I'm sure they have a figure internally. They would never publish that number. So,
Mm-hmm.
so always with the grain of salt. Everyone's basically just guessing.
Yeah, yeah. So I've been hearing that the rescue work, well, the number of North Korean defectors escaping North Korea has gradually decreased from North
Yes,
Korea to China. Has the
yes,
situation, has it become like harder in recent years?
definitely. So, uh, I would say COVID is a really defining line in the history of North Korean defectors because
Mm-hmm.
before COVID, the Chinese government they weren't really sure. I would say where North Korean refugees were within the country. It's a very big country, 1.4, 1.3 billion people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but now, after COVID, after they put all their cameras online and AI powered, uh, everyone is known. So, for example, the Chinese government, for the women in our network, will have them take a selfie with their husband every day and send it in to the authorities. And that's because the Chinese government knows that if they don't get that selfie, then they have about 24 hours to to run, and that's not very long time
Mm-hmm.
for such a huge country. The AI is very powerful in China, and so it leads to something. It's very convenient for the people. You could just walk into a train station without clicking a card, even if you're wearing a mask. They know who you are. But
Wow.
it's and you go to a bank, you don't have to show ID anymore. But they are tracking everyone, and it makes it incredibly
Mm-hmm.
difficult for someone new to come into the country undetected. It's virtually impossible,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also in order to escape as well. Let's say you've been in China and you want to get out of there. It makes it. I can't believe that there are still a couple hundred people who make it into South Korea from China today because of those powerful tools by the government. Um, and so now the government is sort of telling the refugees, um, you know, just live your life peacefully here. Don't make
Mm-hmm.
too much noise and don't talk to any Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, then you're fine. You can live
Mm-hmm.
here. And it's very highly regional as well. But in
Mm-hmm.
some regions, they are actually given some form of ID. It's not an official ID, but enough to like ride the bus, enough to, do very simple things, go to the doctor's office. They're not citizens. They're still technically illegal. And the Chinese government says, we're not going to send you back. But we always tell them, don't believe them. Because
Mm-hmm.
at any moment, if the political winds change, they could round them all up and send them back. I don't think they'll do that, but they could. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's virtually impossible now to escape into China and then to escape out of China.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I was in China back in 2011, the fear of repatriation was real. Like
Yeah,
anytime, like the first time when I escaped, like, I'm just, like a little kid just running around. But after going through all of those struggles and those
yeah,
abuse in North Korea, coming into China again and just seeing a police officer, like my heart would just pound in my throat. And it's like, what if I get caught? And to know that some regions of China actually gives them some form of, because like when I was in China, like I would not be able to talk to anybody because
yeah,
the moment when somebody talks to me, I don't understand Chinese. And
yes,
that is hinting towards like, yeah, this person is from North Korea.
yes,
So that was just terrifying. So I would always go out early in the morning, like 5 a.m. or even like 1 a.m. at night if I wanted to go outside and, just become night owls. But to know
mm,
that, to a certain degree, I know it's not nowhere closer to, being a Chinese citizen, but, at least in some regions of China, North Korean defectors are, given some form of,
yeah,
IDs temporarily, and they don't
yes,
have to face the consequence of the repatriation. That is really, really, to me as a North Korean defector, that is a little reassuring, and
oh
it makes
wow,
me feel a little, just tiny bit comfortable for those people that still hiding in China. And I just wanted to kind of touch on that as well. So like you've been doing rescue work for a long time,
mm,
and I wanted to ask like how dangerous is it for you? Because
yeah,
when I was actually getting help from the brokers that are in China, like I never knew who my broker was because like
mm,
that person, if I were to get captured, right, by Chinese guards while on the bus, like I couldn't like tell who that person was just for
right,
everybody's safety
of
wise.
course, of course, yeah. I no longer go into China. Um, so in 2012, I became executive director of Crossing Borders full time. And up until 2015 or 2016, I was never on our website. I never did anything public because I was going in and out of China so frequently. But we decided as an organization that we needed some sort of public spokesperson. And so at that point, we decided that I will not any longer go into China because of that. But before I stopped going, so one time I was at the North Korea border, on the China side of the North Korean border, um, and we were thinking about partnering with like a farmer out in that area so that maybe there would be a safe area for people to cross. That was our thinking. It never happened, but that was our thinking. So we were at the farm, and I was picking up dirt from the farm because one of our donors is a farmer in America, and he said, just pick up some dirt. I'll do some tests on it to see how fertile the land is, because if we're going to invest in it, then, So I was doing that, and all of a sudden there were like 7, 8 Chinese soldiers that surrounded me. It just so happened that a couple of weeks before, North Korea did a nuclear test pretty close to where I was at. And they thought I was a reporter trying to test for some sort of nuclear material or something. I think they never told me why, but they pointed their guns at me, and they told me to leave the country. And I was able to return again. So, as a U.S. passport holder, at least in the 2010s, that carried a lot of weight in China. Because if I were detained, does China want to start a fight with the U.S. over someone like me? Some nobody, right? Like me, I don't think so. And so I was always assured with a U.S. passport that I would be eventually released. It could take weeks, maybe months, but I knew that I would get out of there. People doing it with a South Korean passport have a much more difficult time. So as a U.S. passport holder, I never had any fear of any long stay in North Korea. I just didn't, Or sorry, any long stay in China. Sorry.
China, yeah. No worries. So when second time escaping North Korea, a Chinese man actually picked me up because I was collapsed in the way from Changbek to, I don't know where I was going. The only thing that in my mind was, I want to get out of Changbek as soon as possible, because the border town, I'm going to get captured. So I ran. I just ran, and I got lost because, I've been walking for 3 days and my shoe fell apart, my North Korean quality shoes.
Oh my God.
And my feet got blisters. I couldn't walk anymore. It blister popped and started bleeding. So I gave up eventually. And, I'm Christian. So I was praying to God, and I told God, because I actually became Christian, well, after coming to America, but I was exposed to Christianity back in China, for my first escape.
Yeah.
And I was praying, and then this Chinese guy who was driving motorcycle picked me up. And eventually he took me to his house and connected me to a South Korean pastor, people who are doing this kind of work like yourself. And that pastor was able to, tell the Chinese guy, give him some money, give him some food, clothing, and everything. And I was able to replenish from there. And that person eventually helped me to escape China, get to my dad's house, and my dad eventually found a broker. So if it wasn't for that person, I wouldn't be here today. So
it's a miracle.
I really it is a miracle, and thank God. And I also wanted to thank you for doing your work, in rescuing all of these North Korean people through your nonprofit. I just want to kind of go into a little bit of hope, right? Because I feel like I'm a very optimistic person. I'm kind of a person who, sees glass half full. And, I believe that even though Kim Jong-un says there's not going to be reunification, it's going to be two different countries from now on. But, I'm still holding on to the hope that, one day North Korea and South Korea will become, one, and people will be, freely traveling across North Korea and South Korea. So I wanted to ask, what's the most inspiring refugee success stories you've
Mm.
witnessed?
Hmm. Yeah. Um, we have a safe house here in South Korea called Elam House for women who need temporary housing. And there are many,
Mm-hmm.
many reasons why people might need that. If they're running
Mm-hmm.
away from an abusive boyfriend, if they are broke, if they got
Mm-hmm.
scammed. So there's this one woman who we call Jamie. She came to Elam House for over a year. She stayed there, and she was fighting a lot with the other residents, and she was not easy to deal with. But as a Christian organization, we feel like one of the most important things is to show people grace. And so that's what we did for over a year. We just bore with her and
Mm-hmm.
with her problems. She was with a very abusive boyfriend who actually scammed her out of everything. And that's why she needed to stay with us.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the course of that year, the boyfriend wanted to get back with her. And she
Mm-hmm.
was actually thinking about that. So we were able to help her through that process and encourage her not to get back with him. Um,
Mm-hmm.
she also, because of her relationship with that man, was estranged from her son, who was born in
Mm-hmm.
China. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
talking, and he was imprisoned in South Korea at that time for other things. And so um, we were able to help her to mend her relationship with her son, to
Mm-hmm.
leave her ex boyfriend and find new housing,
Mm-hmm.
and also find eternal hope. So
Mm-hmm.
she's in touch with us. We consider Elam House to be like a mother's house, right? North Koreans, they come
Mm-hmm.
to South Korea and they don't have family, right? Most
Mm-hmm.
of their family is
Yeah,
still in North Korea. When
back
they
in
get
North
into
Korea.
trouble, they don't have anywhere to go because they don't have family. And so
Mm-hmm.
we want Elam House to be like a family home, and you can come
Mm-hmm.
whenever you want, if there's space, of course. But
Mm-hmm.
she is often in touch with us. She's often just dropping in and having lunch, and um, kind of like a mother's house. And
Mm-hmm.
developing a relationship with her has been so meaningful. Another story is uh, around 2012. No, I'm sorry, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
We helped. We don't do rescue missions. We just help people in China. And when someone wants to leave China, we refer them to other organizations.
Mm-hmm.
But um, we had the special case where we needed to help someone in 2008 leave China, and so we did. And the details are in my book. But
Mm-hmm.
she when she got to freedom in South Korea, she got her identification card, and she told us that um, she held that card in her hand all night and cried all night. She couldn't sleep, but she cried all night
Mm-hmm.
because at that moment she felt a bit again of her humanity coming back to her. Like, oh, I'm a real person now. I
Mm-hmm.
have my ID card. For years and years, she
Mm-hmm.
lived in China, and she
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize that just that experience, she wasn't sold or anything like that, but just that experience of her not having ID was very dehumanizing to her. And when she finally grasped that card, it was like it returned to her again, and she was just crying. It's a very rewarding thing that we get to do for people. It is such a
Yeah.
privilege to be able to help people in such dire need and to
Hmm.
just restore a little bit of their humanity.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
it's such a privilege to be able to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for being part of that, the process. And I'm
Yeah.
sure people who go through your organizations, Crossing Borders NK, I'm sure they feel loved, replenished, and yeah, feeling hopeful. And I wanted to talk
Hmm.
about your book. It's very exciting. And I wanted to ask, why did you decide to write Our Freedom?
Um, so Mike, who is the founder of our organization, he wrote a
Mm-hmm.
book in 2009 detailing his time in China from 2003 to 2006.
Mm,
And a lot has happened since then. And
right.
so uh, the publisher asked me to write a book about what has happened ever since that time.
Mm,
Um, like I said, I truly believe that the situation in North Korea is a generational issue,
mm-hmm.
and it is an issue that generations after us will look back on and ask what we did. And so I think it's very important for people like me who have the privilege of hearing all these tales, all these stories, to document them and to let the world know what is
Mm-hmm.
happening. And so to sound the alarm, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that was my motivation in writing the
Mm-hmm.
story, and all of the money and all of the proceeds from the book go back into Crossing Borders. I will not touch that. So uh,
That's
even
amazing.
more reason to buy the book.
Exactly. Yeah. I wanted to ask, like, was there any like hardest chapters to write?
Mm, yeah. I hear these stories every day, and it's really
Mm-hmm.
hard, but
Mm-hmm.
to sit in them for like a little over a year
Mm-hmm.
was really, really difficult. I would say um, the prison camp chapter was really
Mm-hmm.
hard. I wrote a chapter on prison camp and camps and life outside of North Korea,
Mm-hmm.
or sorry, life inside of North Korea. I would say just, yeah, those two chapters were difficult.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I I wrote in detail about some of the accounts that have been documented by human rights organizations of the prison camps. David Hawk is
Mm-hmm.
was very his work in the hidden gulag, the
Mm-hmm.
papers that he wrote about the gulag system, and just reading those accounts and testimonies that we have documented as Crossing Borders. Um, there was this one uh, torture ways for North Korean government to torture its people by dunking someone in a water tank and just having enough water for them to, if they're on their tiptoes, to breathe out of the water, and having like a brick or something on the feet. And a
Mm-hmm.
woman said she was like in the water and it was cold
Mm-hmm.
for hours.
Mm-hmm.
Just imagining that a person had to like go into work and think of that. That was their job, to think about that kind of torture. Is very
Yeah.
disturbing. It's very
Mm-hmm.
disturbing that someone did that, and someone thought that up and wrote it down and
Yeah.
was probably rewarded for
Yeah.
that. Um, that's things like that are very disturbing. You know, the stories that I tell from the refugees that we help, it's not easy. It's
Mm-hmm.
very brutal. And it was, you know, a lot of friends who love me say have told me, yeah, I read your book. I had to walk away after every chapter because it's so brutal. Um, so it is a brutal book, but hopefully there is a lot of hope in there. I try to insert as much hope as possible because I am very hopeful as well that the situation might change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I am grateful for you and for your work. I think
I'm
a lot
grateful
of
for you,
times,
Charles.
yeah. Well, thank you so much. And a lot of times people think that escaping North Korea is the hardest part. While
Mm,
that is true, I think that what comes after is
yes.
really difficult because you're starting from scratch without any blueprints, right? And now I think there are a lot of communities that in South Korea, here in America, who can support you, but also sometimes it's just the mental, the fights that you continue to do. So having people like you who continue to support the North Korean refugees, I think it is essential so that we have North Korean defectors have platform to stand on and build their life upon it, right?
Yes.
Because eventually, it's not our story that changes the world. It does, but also at the same time, like what we do with our story that will change the world, right?
Amen.
So,
And it's a powerful story. These are very,
mhm,
very powerful stories. And
powerful testimony.
believe it or not, North Korea and China are afraid of your stories. That's how powerful they are.
Mhm.
Um, so keep on telling those stories, man. I will do my best to do the same.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Dan. We are at a time.
Hmm.
And thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much for the work that you do. And for the readers or the live viewers, I'm sorry we couldn't get to your questions. But yeah, please check out Dan's book. It's called A Hard Freedom. And it could be purchased on Amazon. Thank you so much, Dan. And I really
Thank
hope
you.
to meet you in person one day and
Yes.
yeah, talk again.
Great. I'd love
All
that.
right.
All
Thank you.
right. Goodbye.
Bye.